going to have Mrs. Killian lead us in the pledge and the moment of silence and read our vision and mission this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated. Our vision and mission. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners.
Thank you. Dr. Goller, could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Killian,
Present.
Mrs. Lohr,
Present.
Ms. Lauer,
Present.
Dr. Powers,
Present.
Ms. Scott,
Here.
Mrs. Wise, Mr. Irwin.
Here.
Thank you. Now's the time for the first call for citizen comments relating to agenda items only. We have a 5-minute limit, and please state your name.
Can everyone hear me okay with the mask?
Not yet. A little louder, Leah.
Is it turned on and on? Oh, okay. Good evening, President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the School Board of Trustees. My name is Leah Myers. I'm a taxpayer and I'm a concerned citizen. I'm here tonight to express my disappointment in the Vigo County School Corporation community meetings and the repurposing of the administration building due to the closure of West Vigo and Deming Elementary Schools. I attended 2 of the community meetings to learn more details. I was very frustrated that after a 50-minute slide presentation, these meetings only allowed 15 minutes of input from the residents of Vigo County and was followed by a Q&A session which seemed to be more of a sales pitch. Public policy is not created in a vacuum. It takes many stakeholders, community included, to come up with a feasible plan that satisfies most requirements. Unfortunately, too many individuals, once again, feel their voices have not been heard by the administration. Examples: why are we hurrying this issue to a vote after the last community meeting was not even a week ago? Why are rumors being tossed around that this plan is already a done deal before board discussion and a vote have taken place? One of the things about the strategic plan that did impress me was the willingness of our superintendent to take a temporary pay cut to help our financial situation. Our administration is very top-heavy, meaning many of the directors, if not all, are making over $100,000 a year, more money than most of us will see in 2 years' time, let alone 1. At this time tonight, I am asking you, the Vigo County School Board of Trustees, to table any vote on this issue for just 1 session. Vote at the next meeting if you must. This will give you enough time to read through the details of the closing and repurposing of the buildings, make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and that this plan benefits our whole community, not just for the coming year, but for years to come. In closing, I would like to remind everyone again how important community support is to the success of all of our endeavors in Vigo County. In March, the administration will be asking for our input on the high school situation. The question is, will our voices be heard? Will our input actually be considered? And when it comes time for the referendum to support this project, will the voters approve it? Thank you.
Thank you, Myers.
Good evening, Dr. Hayworth, President Lauer, and the board. My name is Matt Larmer, and whenever people ask me what I think the strongest evidence for the ongoing effects of systemic racism in our culture are, I always tell them number 1 is the location and performance of elementary schools. So if you look at the elementary schools in Vigo County, you'll see that our schools downtown often score below 40% and sometimes below 30% on the combined reading and math I-STEP test scores for third grade. And that's true year after year. Then we have elementary schools in the county who often score year after year over 60% or over 70%. So if you look at the locations of those elementary schools, those schools are oftentimes located in the middle of redlining districts. And if you're familiar with the history of redlining, those are areas that have historically not received investment from the community based on different things like especially race and perceived unworthiness of the population there to receive those gifts, to receive that investment. So one of the things that I'm asking as well is a delay on a decision to close these elementary schools, especially Deming, because as you know, Deming is one of those schools that I mentioned that struggles. From what I understand, the students there will be sent to 2 other schools that struggle. And so what I would like to see the board do is to consider a broader vision of how to move forward as a school corporation, one that incorporates the possibility of making our elementary schools more equal in their overall performance. I understand the mindset of closing the smallest schools, but I would love for our school board to adopt a vision that takes those in our community that are struggling the most into account for this overall vision. And so one way that could be delayed would be, as Leah mentioned, the administrative salaries in our community. So if you look at the projections of the demographic research, we're projected to decline by 315 students, and that's a little over $1.8 million. If the administration, those making over $100,000, would be willing to take a 20% pay decrease, and those making over $80,000 would be willing to take a 10% pay decrease. Now, I understand those sound like extreme measures, but I don't think they're as extreme as closing 2 elementary schools. If the administration would be willing to take those measures, we would more than offset the decline in pay and enrollment. And it would send a message to our community that the leadership of our school corporation, as the example's already been set by our superintendent, that they are committed to making decisions that are the best for those that are struggling the most. Thank you.
Dr. Hayworth and the school board. My name is Amanda Sampson. I'm a taxpayer of the community. I've been born and raised in this community. I have one big problem with the relocating of the corporation to West Terre Haute. It is no longer centrally located. There's much better options to locate in town to where it is approximately 22 minutes from anywhere in the county. The residents that have to use the public bus systems will have to walk a little over 5 blocks from the closest bus stop to this school. There are many other options. Deming is the one I picked, and there There's more bus stops available closer to the school. And there's talk about wanting to put the early childhood learning center in Deming. It would be better, West Terre Haute would benefit more for it being here. There are no preschools in this area, whereas in Terre Haute, you have tons of them. The only preschool that was in this area got closed a few years ago, and it was at St. Mary's. Different concerns I've heard is parking at Deming. There's currently 24 regular parking spots at Deming School. There is a blacktopped area that, if it's no longer going to be a school, can be used for parking. People are concerned with the increased traffic that putting the corporation building would have to West Terre Haute. This is a very residential area. People are concerned with what's going to happen to the playground equipment at either school. And another concern was, is this just a temporary move or is it a permanent move? Rumors have been flying around for many, many years about moving to the corporation to Meadows instead of here. And I can say many years because I can go back at least 30 years that I've heard rumors that the school corporation wanted to go to Meadows and eventually build a new building on the empty lot there at the Meadows School. The last concern that I've heard is due to the past representation of West Terre Haute and the minorities that are here. There's people that are afraid to come across this bridge. I went to high school over here. I had friends that refused to come over to West Terre Haute. I had friends from South, friends from North. None of them would come over the bridge. And it's still true to this day. I spoke with a lady who was 25 years old, and she was always told, don't cross the bridge. And yes, she was a lady of color. The second issue we have is with Deming School is in a very, very low income level. The poverty rate at Deming is 94.7%. The poverty rate here at West Vigo is 83.5%. That's going to affect those children from being able to participate in after school activities when their parents cannot come and pick them up because they do not have that transportation to go to the other schools. But they are in walking distance of Deming or West Vigo. And all I'd like to say is I would like to know some answers of why it's not centrally located or what other options you guys have looked at, because I've asked it in the meetings and it has never gotten answered.
Are there any other comments from the audience?
Hello, school board and everyone else. My name's Heather Hindle. I guess I would like to say I'm here from the past. Not really, but my kids went to Chauncey Rose. My 3 older kids went to Chauncey Rose. My youngest one didn't get to go there because it was closed. I thought my kid would be okay. I thought he'd be fine. He comes from a 2-parent family. We weren't in poverty anymore. I was a stay-at-home mom. That school was so overwhelmed. No matter how hard they tried, they were not in a position to meet his IEP even. And I went to meetings. I did everything I knew to do. And they could not really give him the education that he was entitled to by federal law, because they were just too overwhelmed to do it. And I also share the concern of moving the school board building here, because West Terre Haute is a historical sundown town where Black people were in danger if they stayed here overnight. And it hasn't completely lost that reputation. And I do not feel like it's a right thing to do to families of color, to expect them to come to a place they may not feel safe, to be able to participate in their own community. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Hayworth, President Lauer, and Board. My name is Laura Steele. Many of you have communicated with me via email or otherwise. I know that I have sent an overwhelming amount of information and questions to all of you throughout all of this, so I'm not going to touch base on many of those. I just wanted to, I guess, kind of concur with the previous statements of hoping that you'll consider tabling the vote, not only for the concern over the students, especially in the Deming area where they are struggling as it is, and the Deming School has provided them with far more one-on-one attention and support and assistance than they would get many other schools in our area. But also for the fact of the discussion for the Early Learning Center. As a small business owner, a daycare owner myself in that area, I and others that I have talked to have a lot of concerns about how that is going to affect not only our kids, but then eventually our own businesses. What that's going to do to our community as a whole. And I've yet to get any kind of feedback on that really, specifically. No kind of business plans or anything that shows where it's not going to hurt us or how they're going to be able to work with us rather than against us, even unintentionally. We're not against the idea of the school corporation making money, obviously, but we are talking about our own livelihoods also. So I guess my only thing would be I would hope that you would consider tabling it until more of those details are covered and discussed with the community. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Thank you. We'll go ahead to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Irwin made a motion to accept the consent agenda, and Dr. Powers seconded that. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposition? That has passed. We'll go on to the December and January accounts payable docket from the Finance Committee. Is there a motion to accept?
That motion.
You, Mrs. Lohr made that motion.
Second.
Dr. Powers seconded that. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment. This was a first chance that we had as a new finance committee to meet together. We had a lot of questions to go through, and Donna and her team were very thorough with us and answered everything, and we greatly appreciate that. It's nice to see that level of transparency where every single question is being answered, so just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'd like to say the same and follow Mrs. Lohr's example. I think Donna and Cindy excellent job answering our questions and to be very transparent with us moving forward. And I continue to learn and work with the Finance Committee for our school corporation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposition? Pass. And on to donations. Superintendent Hayworth, will you address that?
The administration seeks approval for the following donations to the backpack program, Franklin Elementary School, Sarah Scott Middle School, and Terre Haute South Vigo High School.
So moved.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Mr. Irwin moved to approve, for the donations, and Mrs. Killian seconded that. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposition? That passes. Go on to the old business. Dr. Hayward.
Good evening, Board. The administration brings forward its recommendation regarding the consideration of elementary schools, the consolidation of elementary schools, and the repurposing of 2 elementary schools. These recommendations are in response to the Board of School Trustees' strategic plan. The strategic plan called for the creation of a task force to assist in the recommendation of repurposing 2 elementary schools before the start of the 2021-22 school year, and the repurposing of an additional elementary school before the start of the 22-23 school year. I believe the board included these actions in the strategic plan in response to the unhappy truth of student scarcity. Student scarcity was a key finding in the McKibben demographic study that looked at 2021 through 2031. The study found many things, but I will highlight 4. The resident total fertility rate for Vigo County School Corporation over the life of the forecast is below replacement value, 1.49 versus a replacement level of 2.1. The local 18 to 24-year-old population continues to leave the district, going to college or moving to other urbanized areas. This population group accounts for the largest segment of the district's out-migration flow and will increase steadily over the next 10 years. Discerning is that would be our future elementary parents. Total district enrollment is forecasted to decrease by 315 students, or minus 2.3% between 2021 and 25-26. Total enrollment will decrease by 267 students, or negative 2% from 2025-26 to 2030-31. Primary factors causing the district's enrollment to decrease over the next 10 years is the increase in empty nester households, the relatively low number of elderly housing units turning over, coupled with a flat rate of in-migration of young families. With that understanding that we are a county district, I further believe that the number of total VCSC elementary schools, 18, compared to other similar-sized districts which had 11 elementary schools, and the total number of elementary schools with an enrollment of fewer than 300 students were also factors in the board's decision to right-size the district. As the community plans for our future, The theory of economy of scale is a critical component of the planning process to ensure efficient use of the money needed to operate schools. In the 2018 referenda campaign, this economy of scale was a key component identified for our taxpayers as a spending reduction. An economy of scale is demonstrated when schools can derive a lower cost per student due to the ability to distribute the expenses for fixed costs over more students. As presented to the board, this recommendation finds an economy of scale savings without sacrificing teacher-to-student ratios. Following the guidance of the strategic plan approved on February 24th, 2019, a task force composed of teachers, administrators, staff, and citizens began working on identifying a consolidation plan to reduce the number of elementary schools from 18 to 16. After a review of a number of factors, the task force identified West Vigo and Deming Elementary for consideration into this process. The factors that led to these two schools being identified included, but are not limited to, the following: enrollment, building utilization, age of building, condition of building, number of transitions involved in consolidation. Following the identification of these two buildings at the December 14th, 2020 board meeting, 3 community meetings were conducted. Those committee meetings highlighted the work of the task force, the scarcity of students, and the relationship between enrollment and school funding. Board, to that end, the administration recommends that West Vigo Elementary be consolidated into Sugar Creek Consolidated and Fayette Elementary Schools, and Deming Elementary be consolidated into Benjamin Franklin Elementary and Wabash Elementary Schools. These schools have room, class sizes will not increase, students would be moving from grade schools to grade schools with the capacity to serve them. Further, this recommendation requests that the administration office be moved to West Vigo Elementary School and an early learning center be established at Deming Elementary School.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Irwin moved to approve the repurposing, redistricting of Deming and West Vigo Elementary School. Dr. Powers seconded that. Is there any discussion?
I have something that I'd like to say. As the representative from the west side here, I feel like I have a little bit of stake in this. I feel like West Vigo Elementary has been on the proverbial chopping block since I was in elementary school, and they built the new Consolidated and the new Fayette. And I don't want to pretend that I have an emotional attachment to this building, because that would do a disservice to those who do, because I attended Consolidated, the old building, not the new one. So everything elementary-wise that I have an emotional attachment to is no longer here. What I've come to realize as an adult is that this community rallies behind its own, and I'm looking forward to the administration building being here so that the administration and the Vigo County School Corporation can be a part of the solution to why West Terre Haute has had bad rap or a bad reputation for as long as I can remember. And I want us to be a part of the solution. And that's why I look forward to having the administration building here so that we can be immersed in the community and be a part of the solution. The second thing I'd like to say is we talk a lot about the quality of the education and the class sizes remaining the same. And I have a somewhat stake in that as well, because my oldest child will start kindergarten next year at Sugar Creek Consolidated. So on day 1 of the new consolidation, where we're rearranging the schools on the west side, my child will be there. And I am confident in the teachers and the staff to provide a quality education for my children.
Any other discussion?
Excuse me, make sure you can hear me. I just wanted to take a moment, as a new board member, to say something about this very lengthy process that we're coming to an end here tonight. Joining the body very late in the process as I have, I've been working very hard to understand everything that's involved. And I appreciate every parent voice, teachers, and administrators who provided us with tons of data and good information to make a decision. When I first heard the school corporation's new strategic plan, I was very encouraged. Growing up here and graduating from the school corporation, I wanted to do well. In fact, the good things I heard motivated me greatly to want to be part of this body. From community involvement, development goals that look past just our school corporation and the larger community, and yes, spending cuts. This is one of many. It's not going to solve all of the problems. It's part of a larger plan. And I still think it's an excellent plan. But they're only as good as their execution. And in accepting the strategic plan many months ago, the board already voted in favor of consolidating elementary schools. It's spelled out quite plainly there, as Dr. Hayworth pointed out. So tonight we're coming down not to a vote of if, but of how, and executing the recommendations that have been painstakingly researched, debated, and presented to us with a huge amount of community input. When the strategic plan was formed, there were some 91 public sessions. When the final plan was formed, it was presented in a State of the Schools event last year that I was amazed to see the turnout for that. It was remarkable. When we came to the consolidation task force, the selection and the meetings and the people who were interested and wanted to participate and do it with an open heart for the good of the entire community was incredibly encouraging. And then the recommendations that were presented in the public sessions to inform about what those recommendations looked like, where questions were answered, and the many, many individuals who reached out to us as individual board members, and following up and making sure questions get answered. Through all this, moving from a community member to now as a school board member, I've observed that we love our schools and we cherish them, and we all want the absolute best for our community. And I have observed that our leadership here is working diligently with transparency to right the ship. That's what we're here to do too. And it's not an easy choice. I know it's hard. As Hank said, we have memories too. My mother used to teach music at the end of this hallway, and I walk past her old schoolroom every time we come to a boardroom meeting. But I believe this plan's a solid one. They're about the future where one of Vigo County's top employers is headquartered in West Terre Haute. And I personally think that's great. And where we are investing in one of the proven ways to attract and retain people and talent, which is to create high-quality early learning opportunities at Deming. That's a great step in the right direction. So I'm choosing to celebrate those things, and I hope that we all will look to the future for that. And I just wanted to say that and to thank everyone who's participated and expressed comments and concerns. It's been kind of a gut punch right out of the gates to be part of that decision, but I'm proud of the work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hayward, there's a question I know we had at one of the committee meetings. I don't think it came up at two of the others. But could you explain how Title I schools consolidating into other Title I schools, how actually that there's some benefits to the students from having those resources brought together?
I'll ask Dr. Fitton to come up. She leads our Title I efforts. I'm sure that she could do a much better job than I to speak to how Title I is impacted.
So what we'll do when we do the consolidation is actually look at the students that receive free and reduced funding and which schools they'll be attending, and that funding actually follows the children to the new school. And so I've already contacted the state to let them know that this is a possibility and check to see what procedures are in place for us to make sure that starting day one, we're going to have the resources in those buildings through Title I dollars.
I guess my question is, if you
Okay.
have more students receiving those dollars in a building, is there some greater capacity with numbers that allows you to do additional activities to help the students be successful?
Well, the funding that goes to the buildings, then it can be used for teacher resources. So you have extra hands there to assist students. And what's kind of nice about Title I over the years, they used to have what was called targeted assisted. So you actually had to be a free and reduced child to receive those funds and the support. But we're school-wide sites, and so once one of our schools is identified as a Title I school, every child in that building receives the support that Title I provides.
So the consolidation from 3 schools to 2 for these will actually
It'll
bring some greater
consolidate those resources into one location so that they can work closely together and use it wisely. It's not stretched quite as far. Does that answer your
Thank you.
question?
Any other questions or comments?
I think there's a good many people who are not aware that this is even going on. I received phone calls today that people told me they had just noticed on television because they caught the news that they mentioned closing schools. There's just so much going on a day-to-day basis. People have jobs, they have lives, things slip by. I think we did not make enough of an effort. And then I know that's hard to take because we had so many meetings and we did so much reach out, but it still was not enough because there are just so many people that do not know this is going on. I don't think it would change if we delay. I think it would help maybe soften the blow, more people understood our finances and our numbers. But if we wait, it won't change. The statistics will be the same. But I do think there's value in educating all of our parents and all of our citizens on what we're doing. We have a big knowledge deficit with our community. People don't understand why we make these decisions. And it's on us to keep reaching out, to keep trying to explain. Thank you.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second. Then all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Any abstention? Abstention. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Davis. We're moving now into new business, the personnel report. Mr. Cox?
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, administration seeks approval of the personnel report and professional leave request as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Mr. Irwin made a motion to accept the personnel report, approve the personnel report, and Mrs. Lohr seconded that. Any questions? All those in favor say, raise your hand. Thank you, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Passes. On to the Aquatic Center use agreement between the Wheeler County School Corporation and Indiana State University. Dr. Mason.
Good evening, President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the board. I bring before you tonight an agreement between the VCSC and Indiana State University regarding the use of our Aquatic Center. Indiana State has agreed to pay an annual fee of $47,000 to conduct up to 6 two-hour practices per week and up to 7 meets, not including the conference tournament. We're excited about the continued partnership that we have with Indiana State. Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mrs. Killian, make a motion to approve.
And I'll second.
Dr. Powers is a second. Are there any questions?
this is just a formal agreement to things that have already been going on, correct?
Correct.
I had a question. Is this an increase over the amount that they paid us last year?
I actually have Randy Jensen, our director, with me. Randy, if you'd like to come up. We changed the way that we charge them, and I'll let Randy explain the difference. And so coming up with an annual dollar amount allows Indiana State to better budget for those dollars. But if you want to explain the charges that we
The charges that we, $47,000 is split between their practice rental fee and the amount that they pay for a meet. So last year, they paid $40,000 in practice rental fees, but they practiced 2 to 3 mornings a week in addition to the 6 2-hour practices. So we had to kind of take that out of the mix and then averaged out over the last 3 years how many swimming meets they had and about the approximate cost it would cost us to conduct those, and then add in their rental fee for that. So when they have a meet with us, even though they're paying us to rent the pool for practice, when they have a meet, they also pay us to rent the pool for the meet, plus pay all of our staff on top of that. So it's kind of an average of both things combined into one. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
That helps, yeah.
It erases the up and down flow of how a practice may or may not go, meets
Correct.
being
So,
canceled.
A swimming season for them begins in August, and they would practice about a week, and they're limited on the amount of time that they can practice until they get into September. Then it really ramps up in terms of the number of practices, the length of time that they practice, etc. And what we're able to do is budget. They'll pay us year-round whether or not they use the pool. So they usually use it from the last week in August to about the last week in April. And this year is just a little bit different because everything's been delayed. They didn't use the pool from mid-November until mid-January. So we've kind of delayed their billing up to that point. But anyway, it's about the same as what they've done before. As a matter of fact, if they only have the number of meets that we have currently on the schedule, and I don't expect any additions, that the number of meets that they have will actually make more money on the meet side this year than we did last year.
Is there any conflict with their schedule and our meets that we have for Vigo County?
No, for example, we had the Western Indiana Conference meet Saturday at the pool, and they practiced at the arena pool. That's their backup pool. They also practiced there in the mornings. So the schedule is somewhat flexible for that, but the nice thing is that whenever they practice, it's at a time when we don't have class or other activities, so it's kind of nice for us to be able to rent to them at that particular point in time from 2 to 4 in the afternoon every day.
Now, during COVID, do you actually allow the public to attend the meets?
Right now, the high schools are allowing parents to attend, only 2 parents. And for example, Saturday at the Western Indiana Conference meet, the conference decided to have no spectators. So the kids could use the spectator bleachers and the athlete bleachers, and we spread way out. So about 129 swimmers for about 4 hours Saturday.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. So all those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. It passes. We're on to the appropriation transfers for the calendar year 2020 with Mrs. Donna Wilson.
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of School Trustees. In early fall, the board adopts a budget for the next calendar year that is submitted to the DLGF for approval. Based on that review and approval process, categorical budgets are established and modified then throughout the year as we address the evolving needs of our students and staff. We present this evening in your board packet a list of the appropriation transfers for your approval. This listing reflects the originally submitted 2020 budget, an adjusted budget column that addresses appropriations rolled forward into 2020 from 2019 budgets, the budget reductions from the DLGF review process, and the appropriation reductions from 2020 as presented during the 2021 budget process. And finally, our right-hand column shows the ultimate transfers necessary to balance and close the 2020 budget year. You can see by this list that 2020 expenditures were lower than budgeted, due in part to the establishment of the referendum fund, which provided teacher salaries, the school security program, and subsidized the transportation system expenses and some other miscellaneous costs. Additionally, there was significant savings provided with receipt of the COVID CARES relief dollars and the repurposing of bond proceeds to complete major repairs and maintenance projects. We respectfully request approval for these transfers this evening.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Irwin moved to approve the appropriations transfers for the calendar year 2020, and Dr. Powers seconded that. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. And if you would move on to the resolution to transfer amounts from the education fund to the operations fund.
Board members and Superintendent Hayworth, each year we budget for a transfer from the education fund to the operations fund of the school corporation to subsidize for corporation overhead costs not covered by the operation fund tax levy. This year we request your approval to transfer $1,070,000 monthly for a total of $12,840,000 annually to cover these costs. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor? Thank you. That passes. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Do we have any questions or comments? Dr. Hayward, the legal settlement?
Madam President, members of the school board, pursuant to board action in the fall of 2019, the district, while working with our attorney, looked to solve disagreements between ESG and the Vigo County School Corporation. The settling partners agreed to settle and compromise with respect to that dispute. After looking at all contracts between 2000 and 2016, the parties hired an independent auditor to examine the last 4 contracts: March 2010, February 2012, March 2014, and April 2016. After reviewing these 4 contracts, ESG agrees to pay $1.25 million and forgiveness of approximately $300,000 of outstanding fees to settle this dispute. Administration seeks approval of this agreement between ESG and the Vigo County School Corporation.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Dr. Powers. Mr. Irwin moved to approve. Dr. Powers seconded that. Any questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you to Dr. Hayworth and especially to Board Attorney John Mays. We entered into this quite a while ago. It's been a back and forth, but we do thank everybody for their time and effort into getting us what we hope to do.
I just was wondering, Dr. Hayworth, if you could explain for us why this amount is probably the best case scenario that we're looking at.
I'll probably bring Jonathan Mays to talk about the last 4 contracts and the relationship of the dollar amount we're looking for.
Yeah, and thank you, a good question. Through the process of analyzing these, analyzing prospective legal claims, looking at financial history, and analyzing it with this board, that is where we are at with those negotiations and the back and forth through a negotiated process. And so there's limitations on it, statute of limitations, there's limitations in terms of what are viable guaranteed energy savings contracts, what are not. And so our analysis is different than what maybe an analysis in a criminal setting, because we're in a civil setting, so this is a different process. And so it's a different analysis, and so that's why we've reached that and brought this to the board.
Any other
You know,
questions?
for me, Amy, I think it's as we reflect on those last 4 contracts and the dollar amounts that were attached to those last 4 contracts, I believe this is a settlement that Vigo County Schools should take.
It has been a long journey, and I want to thank especially Council John Mays for helping us through this. So there is a motion to accept and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. The motion passes.
Thank you, board.
We're going on to modification to the board meeting calendar. Dr. Hayworth?
Yeah, the administration recommends in those months where there are 2 board meetings, in those months where there are 2 board meetings, the first board meeting of that month would be turned into a public work session. And we believe that a great deal can be done and would lead to greater transparency as well with that process.
Is there a meeting, there's a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Gillian.
Second.
Dr. Powers. Any questions?
Dr. Hayward, could you describe so that others beyond the board also understand what kind of things take place at a work session?
Yeah, so as we think about this first public work session, the administrative team, we have some items we would like to bring forward for the board to review. We'd like to talk about finance, we'd like to talk about enrollment and upcoming building projects. So we would be presenting those items to the board in open format to where they could ask questions of us, find out greater information that they
Board
would
members
board
can ask
members would seek greater information from us, because what then we would do is try to connect that with the possible board vote at that following meeting. Also, it's the opportunity for the board to identify items that they would like brought to that work session, and almost reverse, ask us the questions of which they would need answers to. We believe it's about a 2-hour process, and so we look forward to conducting those meetings.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment, that there's been a lot of back and forth and discussion with this, and it's a great idea. I think it helps us be able to talk about things in public in a very intentional way, and I hope that's what everyone sees when we make this move. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Now we're on to second call for citizen comments.
I would like to thank the Board of Trustees for having us here tonight to listen to us. I'd like to thank the individuals that came to speak, who either read my letter, saw something that was going on Facebook, some I knew about, some I did not. As to one of the board members' comments, yes, the strategic plan said that we were going to close 2 elementary schools. What it did not specify was that you have chosen to close the 2 most disadvantaged neighborhoods and elementary schools in Vigo County. These families do not have a choice. You're asking them to do something that other schools have not been asked to do. I hope people will understand that when the 3rd school gets picked, it could very well be their school, and to be careful and make sure that their voices are heard. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Thank you, guys. I'd like to thank the superintendent and administration for the great athletic seasons we've had so far. It's been a tremendous effort for everybody, and all the kids that have participated in athletics this year have enjoyed it. I'm a parent of a senior, and for him to go through a senior year and being able to participate in athletics has been awesome. And everybody here has helped, and the superintendent's been supportive in the community, so that's been great. And one thing I'd like the school to consider is there's never been a senior class not to attend a basketball game. And in Indiana, that's unchristian not to go to a basketball game. And we have seniors on the team that deserve to look in the stands and see their kids in the stands. I mean, it's not too much to ask for be 40, 60 seniors in a crowd. We can space them out. They can wear hazmat suits. They don't care. I mean, it would be fun for them to be there and exciting. And I just think it's a chance that they need, because they go to school together, they eat lunch together, they go ride in a car together. So let's don't fool ourselves. We're not keeping them apart, especially the boys and girls. They're still dating and going out. That's not going to change. So I'd like for you guys to consider at least one home game. That would be super. And one last comment. Dr. Hayward talked about enrollment declining. Well, we had a chance to keep a young man here and a person in town with 2 young kids to coach our football team at North. And somehow we made a very big mistake and drug our feet. I don't know what happened, but he interviewed in December. It took forever for him to get the offer, if he even got the offer. And another school swooped him up and took him away. So we've lost a great teacher, a great, parent, a great football coach, a good track coach. Somebody would have been here for 30 years and raised his kids here. They would have went to school here and been good. They would have been great students, good athletes. And we lost him to an outside community because we drug our feet. I don't know what happened, but he should have. It doesn't take 3 or 4 months to hire a football coach. Southport did it in about 3 weeks. So, I would like, for us to consider that when we do stuff that, we lost a valuable member of our community. So, we want to keep people here and do things the right way. So, thank you for your time.
Could you say your name for the record, please?
I'm sorry, Aaron Gadbury.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Larmer. Again, I do just want to state that I had brought this concern of the inequality of our elementary schools up before to administration members, and kind of the response I've received over the years has been that our percentages as an average as a school corporation do well in the state for a city our size. And so one of the things that I would ask as a community member would be that we have a higher standard, that just as a school board and as an administration and as a community, to be able to look at those test scores and say, if Benjamin Franklin is in the 20 percentile of combined reading and math passing. And Dixie Beale Elementary School is in the 70th percentile. We as a community have to do something. Now Benjamin Franklin's been a Title I school for years and years and years and years. And you can go back. And those scores have been the same for years and years and years and years. So my request, and I'm thankful for the decisions the school board, Dr. Hayworth, has made since he's been here. They're difficult decisions, and there's going to be tougher ones to come. But I hope that we can incorporate our elementary schools into the broader vision, how we can help our kids in our struggling elementary schools. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Dr. Hayworth?
And this evening.
Board members?
I would like to just say something. As a new board member, I'm proud of the passion and the willing to work and come to community members that we have within our taxpayers and parents and just concerned citizens. And I hope moving forward that you take that same passion and apply that to how we can best serve our kids, our students, to give them the best educational environment we can. So please do not stop advocating and showing that passion, and please reach out to us at any time. Do not feel that your concerns are not heard or that your questions are not considered, because they are. So I just hope that you reach out to me or any other board member or administrator or even your own school principal, but please continue to reach out and let's work together. Thank you.
Anyone else? I would like to request from Dr. Hayworth that you contact Mike Adamson from the ISBA and set up a possible retreat for the board. If you would work on that, I'd appreciate it. And also, I would like to put in a little plug for the Educational Heritage Association. And I hope that the community is aware of that. It is housed in the McLean building. They have at least 4 rooms, and they are the treasure chest of all schools that have ever been in Vigo County. And I mean ever been in Vigo County. And they have a showplace of memorabilia and some huge posters and everything else from other schools. So if you have an opportunity, I hope that members of the community will pay a visit to the Educational Heritage Association storerooms and see what all is there. It's a great treasure that we have. Any other comments by any of the board members? I declare this meeting closed.